Welcome back, everyone. It's official. Winter is coming. So I've got the snowblower, got it fired up for the first time this year. Got the leaf machine, leaf sucker, all prepped and ready to go. I've been using this actually about once a week to clean up our yard. And then sometime in the early weeks of November, late October, we will get a massive dump of leaves all over the lawn, which that's when this thing goes to work. But to my point, it's time to put away all the toys. And Miata's got, I just put some stabilizer in the fuel, filled the tank to the rim. So if I don't start this car again for the rest of the year until next spring, it'll be okay. So I like to keep this car prepared for long-term storage starting about mid-October, because we have a wedding this week. This upcoming weekend. It's now Sunday, so our wedding is coming up in 1 week, and after that, it'll be family gatherings and all that nonsense for the next couple of holidays. We'll just be too busy to do anything fun. So I washed it, I filled it up with fuel, put the stabilizer in. And it doesn't really need any repairs. I'm going to probably do some minor work to it in the spring. I've got to do the idle air control valve seal. I'm going to just replace it, and I'm going to clean the valve when I have it out. And I'm going to put a new throttle position sensor in, and I've decided that's been giving me some trouble. I've isolated it to that one part, so we're going to be swapping that out. Which brings me to this, the ADV160. It is now parked for the year, parked for the season. We're done. So I want to talk about this bike, and judging by the title, you're probably wondering what's going on. I'm going to probably title this video, Why I'm Selling My Honda ADV. So I'm having a very hard time falling in love with this bike. See, the Honda Helix, we're going back to the Helix again. The Honda Helix was a bike that I really fell in love with. When you find the right vehicle, just like when you find the right partner, you're choosing the right person for you. You both understand each other. You see eye to eye on a lot of things, and you just move forward with that, and you build a life together. Nothing to do with my wedding, but I feel the same way about my bride-to-be. I felt that way about this car, this Miata. As far as vehicles go, this was the car for me. I love the way it drives. I love working on it. I love everything about it. I love the community that was built up around these little roadsters. I just love this car. I don't love this bike. I don't. I like it. I really do like it. I think it's a well-built product. I think Honda did a great job. That was their Thailand division, I believe, that designed this bike. And I think they did a fantastic job. I think it's well-engineered. I really don't have a lot of bad things to say about its overall build quality, its design. I know I had some issues early on with the water pump. Let's talk about it. So the water pump, right after I bought it, right after I took delivery, I drove it around a little bit, put about 100 miles on it, and I noticed there was evidence of a little bit of green coolant dye, dripping, not dripping, but you could see a trail of coolant down from the weep hole in the pump. And that, since I had a warranty on this thing, I'm like, hey, Honda, take a look at this. So I brought it to the dealer, and they replaced the pump, no questions asked. They just took care of it, and it did it again. A couple hundred miles later, brought it back. What the hell? And they replaced it again. They replaced it a total of 2 times. The third time, I said, look, rather than drop this off and get a new pump again, why can you reach out to Honda and see if they have any insight on this? Is this normal? And they did. And the answer that they got back was, just ride it. Eventually it will stop. As the seal, apparently the seal design is it's pretty typical for a motorcycle water pump, and which is why, by the way, a lot of motorcycle water pumps actually do leak. But the seal is two pieces that rub together. One side is stainless steel, the other side is ceramic. And they have to wear together. They have to wear in over time to form a tight liquid, tight seal. And they said, you know what, if you just ride it, it will stop leaking. Just make sure it doesn't run out of coolant. And it wasn't dripping enough for that even to be a problem. So I rode it. I put 1,500 miles on it and actually completely forgot about the water pump for a while. And the last time I took a good look at it, there was zero evidence of coolant leakage. None. Zero. It was like shiny new metal. So that tells me that the problem has self-resolved, and all those water pump replacements were unnecessary. So if you happen to buy one of these, or you're looking at buying one, definitely look at that weep hole, but don't be too alarmed. If it's a low mileage bike, don't be too alarmed about it. It may be completely fine. This one was. So yes, we got about 1,500 miles in this bike, and I rode the hell out of it for about one weekend. And I can't fall in love with it. It doesn't have the right feel. It doesn't have the right stance. I'm not feeling it. You know, what I'll say is this. It's a great bike for somebody else. What I need another Helix. The Honda Helix 250 was a bike that was produced for 20 years, from 1986 to about 2006. And, for the U.S. market. Now, all of what I'm saying is only applicable to the United States because we have a very different market than the rest of the world does. So, the Helix was a bike that you could cruise on all day long. You just get on it, put gas in it, and you just go. You just go. And you don't feel fatigued. You don't feel stressed. The bike itself can handle all the abuse you can throw at it. It was built for longevity, and it was built for long-distance cruising. So there are two characteristic traits that the Helix had that this does not, aside from engine size. This is a 160. The Helix is a 250. The Helix has a longer wheelbase. It's almost a cruiser, like a motorcycle cruiser style wheelbase. I forget the actual axle to axle measurement, but as far as scooters go, for its time, it was the longest one you could buy. It's also fairly low slung, and the rider position is more recumbent than it is on this. You're more upright, like a bicycle. On the Helix, it's more of a recumbent position. You're more or less leaning back. In fact, the seating position is so relaxed. You can buy a Utopia. The company Utopia makes a backrest kit for it, and you can actually lean against it, and it can hold your weight. It mounts to the bottom of the seat pan, and I did install mine on my old Helix. But that aside, it was just a wonderful bike to ride. It was enjoyable. It was uneventful. It was reliable. It was a lot of things, all of them good. The limitations of the Honda Helix, though, were wheel size, mostly wheel size. It had a 10-inch in the rear and a 12-inch in the front. Little small. Yeah, little on the small side. So the consequence of that is it was very sensitive to bumps, and most importantly, your tire life was severely limited if you were going on long distance cruises. I think when I had my 97 Honda Helix, 98 Honda Helix, I had gone through maybe 1.5 sets of tires a year. I was good for at least one complete set of tires in any given year. I rode it for 3 years. I put about 30,000 miles on it with a total of about 42,000 when I sold it. And it was still reliable. It was still a good running machine. I did put a lot of work into it, a lot of money and time, just keeping it up to snuff, replacing things that were deteriorating, and just really keeping up on it, probably more than I should have. But I really took great care of that bike, and it took care of me. I only sold it because I wanted a Honda Silverwing, and that was the big one, the 600. The 600 parallel twin fuel-injected machine. And I loved that bike. For the 1,000 miles I owned it before I got creamed by a small SUV. in a way, the ADV did serve its purpose. It did. It got me back on two wheels. It made me realize that a new bike, a brand new one from the factory, is not always a wise choice. In fact, up here in New England, it's a pretty bad choice because there are endless quantities of used motorbikes of all shapes and sizes that are a fraction of the MSRP up here in New England. New England has a lot of, I think we have one of the highest concentrations of licensed motorcycle riders in the country. One of the highest, maybe not the highest. So there's just no end in supply for used bikes up here. And I paid so much money for this, I am going to lose my ever-loving shirt on this bike when I sell it. And yes, I'm going to sell it. What am I going to replace it with? Well, that's already been determined. Now, I spun yarns about how much I love the Honda Helix, and I wish I never sold mine. But I've been looking at the used Honda Helix. Well, of course, they're all used. I've been looking at the Honda Helix market, and they're actually all over the place. I mean, I could get one in good condition for just a couple $1,000. But there was a bike that replaced the Helix, and it was the Honda Forza. The Honda Forza is a 250cc, basically the same dimensions, modernized version of the Helix. In the United States, that bike was sold under two names. It was the Reflex. It was also sold as the Honda Big Ruckus in a what they call the naked form. So what they basically did is they had the pretty version, which was the Reflex, and that was the effective direct descendant of the Helix. And then they had the Big Ruckus, which is the same bike, but with all the plastic stripped off, a bright yellow frame. I think it came in yellow and black. You get a black one, you get a yellow one. And it had, rather than full fairings, it had strategically placed covers over certain areas, but it wasn't a completely naked bike. It did have fairings, and it had a very simplified instrument cluster, like a binnacle. It was the spiritual big brother to the Honda Ruckus. The name was stupid. Even I laughed at it back then. Who would buy a Big Ruckus? Like, what is with the name? What is with motorcycle companies and names, honestly? Anyway. But it's more whatever. The more common name is the Honda NSS 250, and that is the chassis designation of that bike. The Honda Reflex didn't quite take off here in the States because it wasn't the Helix. The Helix was special. It was its own thing. It had a huge trunk in the back, so it was great for just hauling things. It was literally the F-150 of motorbikes. I mean, you could haul anything with the Helix. I once hauled a chainsaw on mine. I probably looked like a moron doing it. But I've hauled computer equipment, servers. Yes, I actually had a fucking server on my Helix once. I had to bring it from one building to the next, and I happened to have my scooter that day at work. And I've hauled all kinds of shit in that bike. Laundry, you name it. Yes, so the Honda Helix it had its own niche. And the Reflex was just a little bit, I think it was a little bit too wannabe sport bike looking for the Helix buyers. The Helix buyers were looking for something simple to cruise around on. You know, the Reflex more or less kept that spirit, but it was a little bit sportier looking. It did lose some of the utility of the Helix, but it gained it in other ways. I never really was interested in the Reflex myself because it just didn't really. I don't really like the styling. I'll be frank. I don't like the styling. It's just too excessive. The Helix looked like a snowmobile on two wheels. It really did. And it just so happened that I knew way back when I had my Helix, I knew some family friends. They had two Reflexes, a black one and a red one, and they bought them for their kids who were, one of them was my age, the other one was a few years older, and they would cruise around as a family. The kids would have the Reflexes, and the parents had they actually bought Now, this is really an interesting one. The Ridley automatic motorcycle, they had 2 of those. Anyway, fast forward to now. Let's get back to the Reflex. So the Reflex did offer some options that the Helix never had. You could get a version of the Reflex with ABS brakes. ABS brakes, even on cars in 2004, I don't believe was a mandatory option. To have a motorbike, let alone a scooter with anti-lock brakes, was something else entirely. It was a very ahead of its time concept, and only a few Reflexes got it. They were not very common. The more common one was the less expensive non-ABS version. Now, pretty much every bike has anti-lock brakes, at least on the front wheel. This one does, and this has traction control. The Reflex had a full instrumentation package. Unlike the Helix, it was analog, so it had an analog tach, speedometer, fuel, and temp gauge, plus idiot lights for high beam, and I believe there was one for, because it doesn't have an engine light, doesn't have a temperature light, but high beams, directionals, and I think there's like a kickstand one or something like that. Oh, and if you have the ABS version, it has a little indicator light to indicate its functionality and test mode. The Reflex does have a fairly sizable underseat storage compartment that's lit up as well, and it has a glove box like the Helix. It also has a large handbrake or parking brake lever that's mounted here. What the Reflex does give you, though, that was kind of it should have been a bigger deal than it was, but you get larger wheels. You go from a 10-inch rear and a 12-inch front to a 12-inch rear and a 13 front. But most importantly, you do get some upgraded brake hardware. You get hydraulic disc front and rear, whereas the Helix had a rear drum. And one thing that I think was quite often, I don't know if it was overlooked, but they ditched the Helix foot brake for a handbrake on the rear. So the Helix had a rear foot brake, which is common amongst the early 80s or the mid-80s Honda scooters. All Honda scooters had foot brakes except for the Elite 80, the Spree, and I think the 50cc two-stroke Dio. But the 150s, the 250s all had foot brakes. And the Helix was no exception. The foot brakes were kind of a carryover from traditional motorcycle brakes. Motorcycles usually have foot brakes. But on the Helix, they were targeting entry-level riders with these scooters. So let me give you a real scenario, because this actually did happen to me. So the way the foot brake is placed, it's right where you set your feet, okay? So if you tense up and you panic, you can exert way more force on that foot brake than you typically would with a handbrake. So I managed to lock up my rear wheel shortly after I bought the Helix because something jumped up in front of me and I had to panic brake, and I was a new rider. I mean, I was a fairly new rider at the time and didn't have a lot of experience behind the bars. And I managed to lock up the rear wheel. Now, with a handbrake, it would be less likely to do that. The reason that's a huge problem is if you lock up that rear brake, you're more likely to slide out. You will lose control of the bike. It's almost as bad as locking up the front wheel. Only you go like this rather than like, So I nearly bought it right after I bought it. And it was at night going around a curve. It was the worst time ever. Which is why I think that on scooters, it's better to have handbrakes, because you're more if you've ever ridden a bicycle, you're familiar with handbrakes, and that is what most new riders feel comfortable with. Now, on the Reflex, like in all later models of scooters, Honda did switch to a combined brake system, or CBS. On this bike here, there is no combined brakes. So they ditched that design in later models. So this does not have combined brakes, but the Reflex was in that weird period in the mid-2010s, 2000s, 2010s, where they were doing combined brakes on all their scooters. Maybe not the Metropolitan, but I know several models had that feature. I think the SH150, the Elite 110, the Reflex, the Big Ruckus, and am I missing anyone? Yeah. I don't know if the Silverwing had combined brakes or not. I don't recall. But the Silverwing had a very similar brake setup to the Reflex. Well, anyway. And to make things more confusing, the Reflex did go away for a couple years in the US, but it came back as the Forza 300. Now, that's the bike to get. That's the one I really want. I just can't seem to find one for a reasonable price. But getting back to my story. So I was at a party the other day, my mom's birthday party, and the family friend who owned two Reflexes. I was talking to him about his. He's giving up riding entirely for medical reasons. He's getting older, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm just going to sell all my bikes." I'm like, "Oh," and a light bulb came on in my head, and I said, "Hey, you still got that Reflex?" And he's like, "Yeah. It needs a carburetor. It needs all this, and like, because it's been sitting. It's been sitting in his shed for 10 years. It's got 4,500 miles on it. It's just been sitting in the shed. And, gas is all varnished. The carburetor is all clogged to hell, and it won't start. And some wheels in my brain started turning. I'm like, I have a plan. I said, I want to look at that bike. You want to sell it? He's like, oh, yeah, I want to get rid of it. I'm like, all right, we're going to talk. Let's table this conversation for now and have a good time, enjoy the party, and we're going to talk about this. So I did. I actually called him up a couple days after the party. I said, listen, here's my situation. I need to get back into something bigger than this 160, and I know you took really good care of those Reflexes, and I would love to maybe acquire one from you. And he's like, really? And so we talked a little bit about it. Went to his house. I said, let me take a look at what you got, and we'll figure it out. So that's exactly what happened. I went to his house, and we made a deal. So right now, the Reflex that he's got is the red one, and it is all torn apart. He's got the seat off. He's got the bucket out of it. The side panels are removed. He was planning on repairing the carburetor himself, and he's getting ready to do that. He's got it all apart. Batteries out of it, and so I said, I tell you what. Here's the thing. I don't want you to fix it. He was like, I'll fix it. It's like, no. No. I'll fix it. What's your best price? So he shot a price to me, which I personally thought was a bit low. Although it was probably right on the money now that I think about it, but it was a little on the low side. And I said, tell you what I'll do. I gave him $200 more than he was asking. I rounded up to the nearest amount. And I'm not going to tell you what I'm paying for it because it's between him and I. But I rounded up to the nearest whole number. And I said, here's the thing. I can't get it until this is gone. Okay? So I got to put this up for sale, which is going to be in the springtime. But I'm going to work out a deal with him. I'm actually thinking about acquiring it before the holidays because if I can get it into the house, what I'm going to do is bring it down into the basement, and I'm going to start working on it. It's going to be an extensive restoration, lots of video content. This is exactly what I was looking for. It's going to be a complete soup to nuts restoration of this bike. We're not going to go too deep into it, but just here are the highlights. I'm going to do all the maintenance items that need to be done. It's never been serviced. It's got 4,000 miles on it, so it's probably on its second oil change. So we're going to do all the fluids, coolant, oil, rear drive. You want to get them young. That's the thing. With used bikes, ideally you want to get them with low miles, because if it was never properly serviced and it's got 12,000 miles on it, you're going to be opening up a can of worms. I've been there myself. I know. The Elite 150 I had, it was a complete shit show. But we're going to do filters, plug. We're going to do all the fluids, brake fluid, front and rear. I got to take the carburetor out. What I'm actually thinking about doing is removing the entire engine assembly and putting it on my workbench, because there's a few other things I want to do. There's a known issue with the Reflex. So a little bit about the Reflex. So the Reflex, like I said, it's got the disc brakes. But it's also water cooled. The radiator is mounted, instead of being up front like the Helix, it's mounted midship. It's behind the gas tank. That's where the cooling fan is. So it draws in air from the sides and it sends it out the rear. So that's where they put the radiator on the Reflex. They've also taken the vertical engine from the Helix and the Elites, that older style scooter engine, and they made a more compact engine, which is basically what we have here. This is kind of in the same, different engine family, but same basic layout, where the cylinder is horizontal. The whole engine is horizontal rather than vertical, like an L shape. So what that does is it frees up space for storage under the seat. Little fun fact, one of the reasons the Helix has the trunk is because the engine was vertical. And so all the space under the seat was taken up by driveline components, cylinder head, and all that other stuff. So they had to put the trunk in the back. But on the Reflex, because of that new engine design, it's tucked under the floor. So you have room up here for storage, and they didn't have to build this giant trunk for the rear. Really smart design, but did lose some of the character of the Helix. But I digress. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the whole driveline out. I want to address a common repair issue with the Reflexes, which I've known about this for years, which is one of the reasons I never touched one. But we're not in those times anymore. There is a common issue on the Reflex where the cylinder head can actually warp if it loses torque. So this is all because the Reflex is a catalyzed bike. It has a catalytic converter in the muffler, just like this does. All new bikes have that. Well, they started in the Reflex, Honda did, and to make the catalytic converter run more efficiently, to make it function correctly, they had to restrict the exhaust flow a little bit, which raises the exhaust temperature. The side effect of that is you get an imbalance in temperature in the cylinder head. So one of the maintenance requirements of a Reflex is you've got to retorque that cylinder head every once in a while. So it's easier to do when the engine is out of its cradle and on my workbench. So we're going to pull the wheels off. We're going to get it out of the bike, take the shocks off, take everything off, inspect everything really good, check the engine bushings, because it's old. It's 21 years old. It's an 04. So it's 21 years old. We're going to just inspect everything, check the hoses, check everything. And I can still get almost every part I need for it. Most of it directly from Honda. Some of it will have to be aftermarket. Back in my Helix days, I was really preaching OEM only, OEM only, OEM only. That was my chant. But here's the problem. Honda has kind of dropped the ball on support for the Reflex, at least in the US. And I've looked at what parts are and are not available, and it's kind of depressing what cannot be purchased from Honda. Like, for example, the idle air cutoff valve is no longer available, nor is there a rebuild kit for it. I did find an aftermarket rebuild kit, but that's not factory. That's not the same quality as what's coming out. But they do have the basics. They've got the seals. They've got the screws, which apparently you almost always have to replace. They got a bunch of parts for that carburetor, enough to where I can get it running again. Things like brakes, tires, belts, that shit. So all that's still available, readily available. Brake components, even the plastics, the body panels are widely available. Because I'm getting this bike so cheaply, I don't feel bad putting money into it. And like I said, I'm selling this. So it's going to pay for a lot of what that bike is going to need. It needs a paint job. So not because it was crashed or beaten up or anything. No, quite the contrary. It was actually well cared for. But it was in a storage shed and stuff got bumped into it, lawnmowers and rakes and things. So it's not in the best of condition paint-wise. That's okay. I'm going to change the color and I'm going to do it myself. I'm planning on doing a metallic paint job. I have done a lot of car stereos in my free time. So I'm pretty good with paint now. Better than I was in the condo. In fact, I'm going to set up a little paint area in my basement with an exhaust fan and everything, and I'm gonna do it upright. It's gonna be nice. But this guy's got to go, and I'm gonna lose a lot of money. I'm not gonna get what I paid. I'm not gonna get anywhere near that. I'm gonna probably walk away with $3,000 in my pocket, give or take. But I'm not gonna take that. I'm gonna try to shoot for a little higher than that. I'm gonna set a price. I'm thinking $3,500 to $4,000. Let's see how much people try to bargain me down. This bike today at the Honda dealership is selling for, they say like $4,700. Oh, no. Once you pay all the markup and everything and the destination charges and shit, you're gonna walk out with $5,500. That's about what you're gonna have to pay for this. So. This is going to get sold, but I want to get that Reflex in the basement as soon as I can. So after my wedding, I'm going to scrounge up some money and we're going to make this happen. So, that's the plan. ADV is going, it's going to go probably in the spring. I'm not going to put it up for sale now because, well, it's winter and we're in fall and no one's going to pay top dollar for even a like new scooter like this one. They're not going to pay what I need. Right now, so that's my plan. Hope it works. I hope it comes to fruition. But it's more or less a definite, and we'll see how bad that Reflex really is and how much work it really needs. One more thing. It's the ABS model. It's the ABS model, which is a rare bike. They're not. I looked at like a dozen Reflexes for sale in my area. Not one of them was ABS. I went on eBay looking for a Reflex, just kind of to see what's out there for parts. I looked on eBay for an instrument cluster for a Reflex just to see. Number one, I want to see what the mileages are on these. I also want to see if there's any other ABS ones out there. Not a single one. Not a single one. None for sale. No ABS. Display or instrument clusters are available right now. Most of them were non-ABS models. I'm actually kind of glad that it is one. It makes me feel better because if for some reason that front wheel ever locks up, it won't. So it's a safety feature that I'm willing to pay for. So that's the deal. And I'm looking forward to what I can come up with for both paint and other stuff that I want to do to it. I don't want to get rid of this bike. I wish Honda sold something comparable to the outgoing Silverwing or the Reflex or the Forza. I wish they would do something like that in a scooter because I like scooters. I could buy a full motorbike, but I want a scooter. Does it make me a bad person? I guess so. Well, according to Honda's investors, I'm not a good investment. But then you've got to factor in how much these bikes cost and how much. So if Honda brought to the U.S. the ADV 3, is it a 300 or a 350? The ADV 300, let's just call it that. There is a 300cc single cylinder, just like this, but bigger. They're built in the Italy factory, and they're quite popular in the markets that they're sold in. But Honda just won't bring them here to the U.S. They just won't do it. I don't know why. I think it's a sure thing. It would sell, but Honda's like, no, fuck you. So, I mean, you know, what do you say to that, right? But this bike is pretty well built. I mean, a lot of engineering went into this thing, and I don't want to see it go. I don't have to sell it. I could keep it. I could hang on to it, but I'm not going to ride it. If I have something bigger and faster, I'm not going to buy it or ride it. It's just going to sit here. So let it go to a new home. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you for watching.